Steel tubes, fabric wings, and radial engines refuse to fade into history. From aerobatic legends to wartime trainers, classic biplanes continue captivating pilots and audiences through honest flight, simple maintenance, and pure flying joy. Best classic biplanes time can't knock down. The Baby Great Lakes emerged in 1957 as a scaled-down tribute to the legendary Great Lakes 2T biplane from the golden era of American aviation. Designed specifically for home builders seeking authentic aerobatic thrills without factory costs, this compact fighter combined steel tube fuselage construction with wooden wing structures covered in aircraft fabric. The result was a lightweight yet robust airframe that maintained low weight, simplified maintenance, and enabled quick repairs in modest workshops. Continental C-85 O200 or Lycoming O235 engines, producing between 85 and 118 horsepower, provided spirited climb rates and instant throttle response throughout the flight envelope. The single-seat cockpit placed pilots directly into the action with direct control linkages, translating every input into immediate rolling authority and precise vertical tracking. Structural integrity supported aerobatic sequences, demanding total commitment from both machine and aviator. Performance supported full basic aerobatic repertoire, including loops, aileron rolls, chandelle, and Cuban 8s, within structural envelopes typically rated at +6, -3G loading limits. Cruise speeds settled around 95 knots, while fuel consumption remained modest at approximately 5 gallons per hour, making regional flights practical between aerobatic practice sessions. The conventional gear and well-balanced center of gravity generated predictable landings even on challenging grass strips nationwide. The compact dimensions and muscular stance earned it the nickname Pocket Fighter among enthusiasts, who appreciated authentic open cockpit sensations and direct mechanical feedback impossible to replicate in modern designs. For builders seeking dancing flight rather than mere transportation, this design opened doors to classical aerobatics, with contained costs and manageable complexity. Yet another legend was brewing across the Atlantic, one that would redefine recreational biplanes through modern engineering, wrapped in vintage aesthetics and accessible operation. Russ Light created the Sherwood Ranger in the late 1980s, reimagining romantic 1930s trainer biplanes through contemporary construction methods and accessible power plants that welcome pilots back to recreational aviation. The design featured aluminum tube fuselage structures combined with fabric-covered wings, delivering easy visual inspections, straightforward repairs, and ownership costs that made weekend flying viable. Modern techniques merged seamlessly with traditional aesthetics, creating harmony between past and present. Rotax 5, 82, 912, or Jabiru 2200 engines, producing between 65 and 100 horsepower, pushed the Ranger through cruise speeds near 90 knots with serene climb performance and fuel consumption matching weekend touring budgets perfectly. Conventional gear geometry and effective shock absorption forgave grass strip landings common across European flying clubs where pavement remained scarce. The power plant flexibility allowed builders to choose based on budget, availability, and performance priorities. The tandem cockpit configuration offered panoramic visibility, while open cockpit variants restored sensory connections with slipstream and engine sounds that modern enclosed cabins eliminated completely. Low wing loading combined with effective flaps enabled short field operations and predictable low-speed handling characteristics that built confidence rather than demanding constant vigilance. Approach speeds remained honest and forgiving, teaching fundamentals while providing safety margins for pilots returning after extended absences from active flying. As kit offering, documentation clarity and accessible tooling requirements attracted builders worldwide seeking traditional biplane experiences without maintenance nightmares or operating expenses bankrupting weekend aviators. The Ranger proved vintage aesthetics and practical everyday flying weren't mutually exclusive propositions for modern enthusiasts seeking connection with aviation heritage. Across decades and oceans, another simple design was quietly earning devotion through honest flight characteristics and wartime heritage, refusing to fade into obscurity despite relentless technological progress. J.O. Currie designed the Currie Wot in the late 1930s, creating a small British biplane that would survive war, rationing, and countless revivals to become one of the most beloved light biplanes in aviation history. The concept emphasized robust simplicity, clean lines, and flight characteristics free from surprises that could catch inexperienced pilots off guard. Wood and steel tube construction kept weight minimal, while enabling repairs in modest workshops using traditional craftsmanship techniques passed down through generations. Continental A65, Volkswagen aeronautical conversions, and modern Rotax 912 engines, producing between 65 and 80 horsepower preserved economical operations while delivering adequate performance for regional exploration between grass fields. Cruise speeds typically settled around 80 knots, providing sufficient range for hopping between countryside airstrips, while fuel consumption remained compatible with recreational budgets. The low power requirements translated directly into contained operating costs that welcomed pilots seeking affordable flying. Longitudinal stability and generous rudder authority simplified conventional gear operations, helping pilots master takeoffs and landings even when British winds turned capricious and challenging. The Wot wasn't designed for racing or record-breaking. It was engineered as faithful companion for low-altitude exploration and skill development. Control harmony taught hands and feet coordination while forgiving minor technique lapses that would punish less benign designs. Visual appeal recalled interwar aesthetics, without the fragility plaguing certain museum rarities destined for static display rather than active service. This durability spawned kits, replicas, and restorations, valuing authenticity over modernization, preserving traditional construction methods and flying qualities. For veterans appreciating ritual pre-flight inspections, hand-propping starts, and slow taxi procedures, the Wot delivered quality airtime with honesty explaining its remarkable longevity. A small classic resisting obsolescence by executing simple missions exceptionally well through decades of aviation evolution. Frank Christensen launched the Christen Eagle in the late 1970s with a bold proposition: maintain ferocious aerobatic capability rivaling competition standards while elevating fit, finish, comfort, and showmanship to unprecedented levels. The airframe followed, proven formulas with steel 4130 fuselage, fabric-covered wings, and direct control linkages, but the complete package was engineered for high-quality kit construction with tight tolerances and comprehensive manuals guiding builders through complex assemblies. Lycoming A EIO 360 engines, producing approximately 200 horsepower with appropriate propellers, attacked altitude enthusiastically, sustained series of plus 6-3G maneuvers, and rolled with hypnotic speed that captivated audiences. Wing profile and geometric relationships provided precise tracking through vertical lines and clean recoveries from combined maneuvers demanding total coordination. The tandem cockpit configuration facilitated aerobatic instruction and shared flights, while panel layouts accommodated everything from the basic 6 instruments to modern electronic flight information system suites. What transformed the Eagle into icon was aesthetic impact: multicolor gradient paint schemes, flowing canopy lines, and proportions appearing airborne even while parked on ramps. Conventional gear proved honest during ground operations. Airborne control harmony between aileron and elevator inspired confidence throughout the aerobatic envelope, extending well beyond basic figures. For builders, the kit established benchmarks for component quality and assembly documentation. For spectators, the design became camera magnet, generating applause at air shows nationwide through combinations of precision flying and visual drama. The Eagle demonstrated pure aerobatics could simultaneously be performance art rather than merely technical exercise executed inside invisible boxes. It proved biplanes could serve as precision instruments and entertainment spectacles simultaneously, forever changing expectations. Meanwhile, another compact design was showing that garage mechanics could reconnect with open skies through efficient engineering and muscular proportions. Frank Smith conceived the Miniplane in 1955 to rekindle connections between garage mechanics and open skies through compact, muscular design philosophy. The project became symbol of post-war home-built renaissance, delivering authentic flying experiences without overwhelming complexity or cost. Steel 4130 welded fuselage, fabric-covered wings, and tight geometry created lightweight cells resisting decades of use. Continental, a 65, C85, or O200 engines producing between 65 and 100 horsepower pushed the miniplane through cruise speeds near 110 knots with frank climb and sympathetic fuel consumption. Conventional gear and well-chosen center of gravity generated predictable landings. Low wing loading helped short takeoffs and landings on grass fields nationwide. Inside aerobatic boxes, the design tackled basic figures gracefully. Loops, rolls, hammerheads, and Immelmans entered with direct command authority without surprises awaiting pilots. Small dimensions created sensations of body extensions rather than separate machines, explaining post-flight grins universally. As kit offering, documentation remained didactic with clear drawings and accessible tooling requirements. Community members called it friendly mini-pits, less extreme, more companionable, equally photogenic in formations and solo displays. For builders wanting biplanes fitting time and budget constraints while delivering classic emotions without 300 horsepower bills, the miniplane continued providing sharp answers. Elegance and docility were waiting in another design honoring pre-war traditions. John Hatz created the CB-1 in 1968 as accessible homage to pre-war Waco biplanes. Elegant lines, harmonic proportions, and docile flight characteristics welcoming pilots back to recreational aviation. Steel 4130, fuselage, and fabric-covered wooden wings guaranteed rigidity and repairability in modest workshops. The classic Evolution refined aerodynamics and ergonomics with roomier cockpits and finishing details, elevating comfort significantly. Lycoming, O235, O290, or O320 engines, producing between 115 and 160 horsepower, sufficed for realistic cruise speeds near 100 knots with healthy climb and consumption compatible with weekend leisure budgets. Conventional gear remained stable on grass. Generous tail surfaces aided low-speed control-making approaches and roundouts predictable always. Light aerobatics? Absolutely. Basic figures within usual envelopes with structural margins and clean recoveries defining gentleman biplane philosophy, prioritizing smiles over sweat. As kit offering, documentation, and community support shown through decades of builds, improvements, and flying examples accumulating worldwide. Visual appeal proved determinant. Curved profiles, round cowls, and silhouettes drawing skies beautifully. For experienced pilots wanting stable companions for scenic flights, two-person outings, and hangar rituals, the Hatz delivered rare balance between authentic nostalgia and modern usability without giant costs. Serious aerobatics and tandem comfort were converging in another legendary design. Power and presence awaited those seeking ultimate performance envelopes. Lamar Steen launched the Skybolt in 1970 to unite two worlds. Serious aerobatics and usable comfort for two occupants sharing flight experiences. Steel 413 zero fuselage, robust fabric-covered wings, and geometry designed to sustain broad envelopes of +6, -3, typical loading composed cells ready for competition boxes and cross-country cruising simultaneously. Engine range proved extensive. Lycoming O320, O360, producing 160 to 200 horsepower, plus big bore and fuel-injected variants transforming biplanes into enthusiastic vertical pullers. With 180 to 200 horsepower, the Skybolt settled into 155 not comfortable cruise with vigorous climb and command authority, inviting combined sequences including snaps, avalanches, and rolling circles. Tandem cockpit proved usable. Worked ergonomics, open cockpit ventilation, and possibilities for modern instrumentation maintaining classic aesthetics throughout. Conventional gear demanded technique but remained honest. Airborne axis harmony became calling cards as aircraft profiled, pointed, and stayed exactly where pilots commanded. As kit offering, decades of refinements and popular firewall forward packages accumulated through active communities. The Skybolt grew with pilots, beginning with basics, advancing to complex sequences, delivering shows when needed, and cruising serenely next day toward aerodrome cafes. Power, presence, and versatility in packages filling camera frames worldwide. Yet one design stood above all others as pure aerobatic gold standard for solo pilots. Minimalism and extremism were about to converge in legendary form. Curtis Pitts created the S1 during the 1940s, establishing gold standard for single-pilot aerobatics that remains unmatched decades later. Minimalist and extreme, the machine translated intention into attitude without delay or compromise. Steel 4130 structure, symmetrical fabric-covered wings, and generous control surfaces resulted in brutal roll rates, linear responses, and precise tracking inside competition boxes worldwide. Lycoming O320, O360 engines, producing 160 to 180 plus horsepower with propellers, prioritizing vertical bite-attacked sky aggressively. Elevated load envelopes in appropriate versions supported competitive sequences with snaps, flicks, and torque rolls, humiliating less rigid proposals attempting similar maneuvers. Visually, the Pitts S1 became pure icon. Tiny, nervous, with planted gear and cowling fitting pilots like second skins. Operationally, the design demanded discipline, alignment, energy management, and fine coordination. Rewards came through straight lines, point stops, and clean exits from figures. Crews fulfilled ferry missions with dignity, but natural habitat remained aerobatic boxes where precision mattered most. As plans offering, Evolution brought improved jigs, fittings, and documentation. As community, separate world emerged, adjusting cabanes, interplane struts, and incidences. For pilots seeking classical precision apex, no real substitute existed. The Pitts S1 remained reference because decades proved it delivered promises consistently. A surgical instrument for sky, sharp and faithful always. Wartime training heritage was calling, bringing radial sounds and open cockpits, teaching fundamental skills. History was about to speak through round engines and fabric wings. If any sound defined training for thousands of military pilots, it was the radial rumble of the Stearman. The PT-17 primary wartime trainer combined simplicity, robustness, and docility in cells withstanding decades of intensive use. Structurally, it followed classical school. Steel truss fuselage, fabric-covered wooden wings, wide-resistant conventional gear, absorbing punishment from student landings across training bases nationwide. The Continental R670, producing approximately 225 horsepower, represented typical Hart, although variants with other radials existed completing power plant configurations. Objective never prioritized speed but predictability, low wing loading, large surfaces, and present rudder-educated hands and feet from taxi through touchdown. Takeoffs demanded torque and wind management. Landings required proper energy and patience always. Cruise speeds settled around 90 knots with radial fuel consumption. But who cared when experiences delivered open cockpit immersion, sonorous symphony, and cinematic sensations impossible replicating? Today, many fly as entry warbirds, scenic tours, basic formation, airshow participation, maintaining living history connections. The Stearman was flying museum and classroom simultaneously, teaching fundamentals transferring to any modern aircraft while delivering sensory pleasure impossible finding in pressurized cabins. Icon refusing age because it formed people, not just pilots, through patient instruction and forgiving characteristics. Across the Atlantic, another legendary trainer was writing similar stories with British elegance. Empire heritage and training tradition were converging in final classic biplane that defined an era. The Tiger Moth was to the British Empire what the Stearman became for America, elegant entry gateway into military aviation. Designed in early 1930s by Geoffrey de Havilland, the DH-82 guided thousands from first control touches to Royal Air Force standards through forgiving characteristics and balanced handling. Structurally, it represented simplicity masterpiece. A wood and steel fuselage, fabric-covered wings with incidences favoring benign stalls and low-speed control authority. The Gypsy Major engine, producing approximately 130 horsepower, spun serenely with unmistakable timbre, completing classic signature. Tall, conventional gear and long nose demanded technique, but low wing loading and generous rudder area smoothed beginner errors during takeoff and landing phases. Cruise speed settled around 80 knots. Consumption remained compatible with prolonged training missions. What made the Tiger Moth special was a combination of docility and ritual, donning flight suits, checking cables, opening windows, and aligning on English grass fields contained something liturgical and ceremonial. Even after jet era arrived, the design continued offering scenic rides, checkout flights, and historical preservation worldwide. For pilots wanting to feel how aviation began, few machines translated soul as authentically. Wind in faces, gentle responses, grass landings, and certainty that before everything, flying was art and living tradition. The Tiger Moth proved time cannot knock down machines teaching with grace. Fabric wings and round engines taught generations that flying transcends technology through honest characteristics and sensory connections. Modern cockpits eliminate. These legends endure because they deliver joy beyond transportation. Which design captured your imagination? Smash that like button below. Drop your favorite in comments and tell us why it resonates. Hit subscribe so you never miss our next exploration into aviation heritage. Share this journey with fellow enthusiasts who appreciate machines time cannot defeat. Watch the videos appearing on your screen and continue with us. Bye-bye.